Hi, I'm Brian Brennan, editor of Street Rodder Magazine. Today, we're at our tech center in Santa Ana, California, where we're going to show you how to drop in Ford's latest performance module. It's based on a Coyote motor and transmission. It's a complete crate package. What we're going to do is we're going to walk you around the entire car and show you all the modifications that we made, that had to be made, or we just thought this was a great time to do it. So we're going to walk now on over and see our 41 Ford Woody. Okay, we find ourselves now looking into the engine bay of our 41 Ford Woody, and there's our little Coyote motor resting in place. It's part of the Ford Performance Module, which is the Coyote motor, 5-liter, 440 horse, and it's matched up to a 6-speed automatic transmission from Ford. Now, Ford did all the hard work. They matched it up. They've given you all the parts you need to put it together, but more importantly, they've given us a controller, a computer, that's going to run the engine and run the trans. They've given us the wiring loom. They've given us a drive-by wire. They even include some of the cold air package you need that you'll probably have to modify depending on your installation. But basically, it's a complete package. Now, we're hot rodders, so we can't leave anything alone. So we drop this in and we go, well, we want air conditioning on this car. So we've used a front runner that comes from Vintage Air. Now that goes directly on the engine. It's a bolt-on project. There is one modification that you have to do in order to make all this work, and that's on this package where the alternator would normally sit won't clear our front cross member. So we had to flip that around, and we used a PowerMaster alternator to do that. Now the guys here in the tech center, and they're headed up by Jason Scudellari, who's our tech center guru, and we like to refer to him as IJ for Installation Jason. You can't give him anything that he can't get into something. And he did a beautiful job here. One of the things we had to overcome, there's basically enough width and there's height. Where some of the problem area was in this installation was against the firewall and the toe board, floorboard area. We wanted to make sure we had enough room for the air to flow over the motor, heat mapping, so we thought, let's put a recessed firewall in. By doing the recessed firewall, the battery had to be moved to the back, but now we have a spot up front where we could mount all of our electronics, our painless performance, wiring, harness, controls. We had to do a few things like that. The battery box, we just got a hold of an Eddy Motorsports battery box. We put an Optima battery in it, and then we got a hold of a painless 16-foot remote battery wiring kit. That allows it to put the battery in the back and have plenty of the proper gauge cable to run up here and power our motor. We went to direct sheet metal. That's where we got the firewall. Jason carved up a nice toe board and trans tunnel and floorboard. He made that himself. So he got that part taken care of. Up front here in the engine, hoses. Well, you're just not going to go to your auto parts store and ask them and say, hey, I got a 41 Ford that I put a brand new Coyote motor in it and I'd like to have some radiator hoses. Not going to happen. So Jason got his tools out and he made us a combination of some metal piping that runs the water and then put some rubber ends on it to give it plenty of flex. He did the hoses. We went to Don over at US Radiator and he got us a radiator with his fan and fan shroud, electric. And then we went to Durali and we got their transmission cooler. So all of that is mounted up front here. Plenty of room. The motor rests in place with a set of Roadster Shop motor mounts and tranny mounts. We got that from them. We went over to Patriot, which is the Pertronics guys, and we picked up a set of their truck headers. They're tight-fitting block headers. That helped us out a great deal there. Generally, the passenger side, you have plenty of room to work with, less problems there, and that's the way it was here. We didn't really have any issues. We got over here to the driver's side, and what's the first thing we've got? We got to deal with steering. So we have a Flaming River column. We used their steering shaft, and we used their U-joints. That hooked up to the rack and pinion steering. So far, so good. We made a few little tweaks and bends there. We got everything to clear. So we're real happy with the way the motor sits. We've got plenty of clearance around it in the engine bay. So now there's a few other things that had to happen on the inside. We're going to go inside and we're going to take a look at the steering and the gauges and a few other things that we've done. So right now, let's just let the engine compartment sit and let's go inside. Oh, now the comfort and fun starts. Every hot rodder loves working on his car and building it. But you have to admit, when the time comes to finally drive the car, get out and enjoy it, it's really satisfying. Well, we find ourselves in the interior. We're going to go over some of the things we had to do to make our Ford Performance module come to life. Let's start at the bottom of the interior and work our way up. Lots of Dynamat. We put in Dynamat to make sure we had plenty of insulation against heat as well as sound deadening. And then on top of that, we've got new carpeting. Well, we went to Ron Mangus. Mangus did us the carpeting, the toe board cover, the back of the firewall, quarter covers on the kick panels. Did a nice job. But the big thing, because Jason had to make new floorboards and a transmission hump, we have a significantly bigger tranny hump now. So Ron came up with a center console that houses our low car shifter, which goes to our Ford 6-speed transmission. That worked out really well. From there, we move over to the throttle. The throttle is not in its stock position, but it's close. But one of the things we found out right away, which, by the way, we've driven the car to Vegas and back, and it's fantastic on the highway. We've moved the throttle, but it's in a great position. Your foot, your leg, everything's comfortable, no problems. The throttle is from Ford. It's part of their kit that you get. So now we have our drive-by-wire. Everything's cool. Next to it, we've got our brake pedal. The brake pedal, we went to CPP. We picked up a master cylinder. We picked up their brake pedal. Went to inline tube, got their tubing. We've got it run from the master cylinder to the corners. So we've got our brake, our throttle, and our shifter all taken care of. But when you're looking at the dashboard, you see these gauges, and when you take a look here at our 41 Woody, you realize, wow, that looks stock. But on closer examination, you realize this has been a completely customized set of gauges, modernized to work with the new Coyote motor. It was done by Classic Instruments in their custom gauge shop. How are we going to steer this thing? Well, remember, we talked about having the Flaming River steering shaft, U-joints. That's great. That's all taken care of under the hood. But what about inside? Inside, we've got our Flaming River steering column and steering wheel. Perfect positioning, very comfortable. Go down the road, tilt wheel, put it where you want it. Everything's great. Remember, we had our vintage front runner that we installed on the motor. Okay, that's great. That's running. Everything's looking good there. But what about inside? Inside, we went back to Vintage Air, got their Gen 4. That's installed. Now we have great creature comfort and air conditioning. I mean, all that's left now is basically to fire this up and go for a drive. But you know what? Maybe let's just jack this up and take a look underneath and see what else was done. All right, we find ourselves underneath the car. For everything that went on up top, there's just as much going on down here. In the back, let's start with the gas tank. It came from Tanks, and it has an internal electric fuel pump that handles our EFI motor. Our Coyote motor is fuel injected. Puts out about 100 pounds internally, so we have a regulator up here that's going to step it down to about 60 pounds, which is what the engine wants to see to live. Also in back, we've got our Ford 9-inch rear end. Every hot rodder in the world is familiar with this. Most hot rods have 9-inch. This came from Curry, has 370 gears. Because of the overdrive transmission, remember it's a 6-speed overdrive from Ford, we thought we'd get away with a little bit of gear. So we put some 370 gears in it, helps with around town driving. You get on the highway, no problem running 70, 80 miles an hour, barely twist 2,000 RPM. The wheels and tires, Coker. We went to Coker, we picked up their Firestone. They look like bias ply, but they're a radial tire, great riding tire. And we have our Inland Empire driveline. Now we'll move up to the middle. All right, we find ourselves still underneath our 41 Ford Woody, and we're getting into the meat and potatoes now. I mean, some real hardcore work you have to do to get your Ford Performance power module all squared away. Remember, the modified X-member. What we had to do is cut the stock X-member. Jason did that. He cut it. He made new side rails for the X-member, punched some holes in it so it looks stock, put in the Roadster Shop transmission cross member and tranny mount. That's important. Got all that squared away. So now we have our 6-speed Ford transmission mounted in place. It's all good. Links up to our Inland Empire driveline, our drive shaft, so that's looking good. Right above my head is our CPP master cylinder with our inline tubing, and from inline we also picked up the brake light switch, the residual check valve, and the proportioning valve. So our brake system now is all taken care of. We talk about our JBA stainless mufflers, our exhaust system. It has a crossover tube, our tranny, everything here in the middle of the car. This was a big job. This was really critical to get it right, to make everything work. Jason did a great job of modifying the X-member. Tranny's in place, we're looking good. Now we can move to the front of the car. Up front, we used a Fatman IFS, which every hot rodder in the world should know about that. It's a common part that we all have. And we have our QA1 shocks. Now, we did use a Flaming River Power rack and pinion steering, so that's all in place. That worked out well. So that just about wraps up what we've done to get our Ford Performance Power Module into place. Now, before you jump out on the road and have a great time, remember to check all your fluids. Well, we went to our parts bin and we dug out our AMSOIL fluids and we filled up the engine and the radiator and we filled up the power steering, and we've got the rear end taken care of and the transmission. So we've checked all our fluids, we've wrapped up our build, so now it's about time to take our Ford Performance Power Module out on the road. And remember, this kit, because it comes with so much, you can drop this into any of your early hot rods or your late model hot rods. You know, like an early car might be a 32 Ford or any of the fat fender cars, it's going to work just fine. But what about the 50s and 60s Fords? This engine and transmission is ideal for them, and it will drop into place, and you're going to have drivability, you're going to have performance, you're going to have everything you want in your hot rod, and you're going to have the latest from Ford.